Good morning, Gracers. We are doing Claude Monet this month. Long awaited. It's been 7 years at the school for me, and I'm so excited that we finally get to do him. Claude Monet was born in 1840 and died in 1926, and this, of course, is a picture of him. He was born in Paris and then moved to Le Havre, on the coast of France, when his father went into the grocery business. He was 15, and a local seacoast, when he was 15 rather, a local seacoast painter named Eugene Baudin introduced him to the experience of painting in the outdoors on the Normandy coast. I personally can't think of a better place to be exposed to painting. Needless to say, that changed his life forever. He later wrote saying that suddenly a veil was torn away and his destiny as a painter opened out to me. During his lifetime, he painted constantly, and he produced over 3,000 paintings, spending his entire life trying to capture the light of the outdoors. I love this. So Monet did not like school as a boy, and he liked to roam around the outdoors. He would spend his time in the classroom drawing caricatures or cartoons of his teachers. So this can be kind of fun. Why is this drawing not realistic? Have this discussion with the kids. Look at the size of the nose and the tiny little body and the large head. How do you think that this would make you feel if somebody drew this about you? And how do you think Monet's teachers thought about his artwork once it was being created during class? And of course the answers can range from they would be upset to thinking that the artwork is actually quite good and the detail quite amazing, and it's kind of fun how he distorts the perspective. This right here, and I'm sorry I never took French, is Jean Marguerite Lacadre in the garden in 1866. It's a beautiful picture, and here it's starting to be a little bit more realistic as opposed to impressionistic. This is one of Monet's early and more traditional paintings. Before Monet, landscape painters generally made their sketches outside and then had to return to their studio to complete the actual painting from memory, and they had to do it in dim light. But Monet believed that you must paint a landscape outside and not in a studio. And of course that would give you the changing light and a better idea of what happened to the light as opposed to your actual sketch, and then you're trying to remember it. Sorry for the jiggling, everybody. I had to shift. Anyway, you can begin to see a move towards the Impressionism with a less precise brushstrokes. So when you were doing realism, you're going to see very precise, trying to mimic an actual replication of what was going on in reality. Here, you're starting to get away from that. There's short brushstrokes. You can still see what's going on, and you can tell that a tree is a tree, and there's not really a blurred thing, but he's starting to get away from realistic and going into Impressionism. In 1859, when he was 19, Monet moved to Paris. He met artists and poets and writers who all got together and exchanged ideas and began to discuss new discoveries. He continued to enjoy painting outdoors. So it was really a collaborative effort where everybody was throwing around ideas and working with one another in order to come up with what's next. He often painted with his friend and fellow Impressionist painter Pierre Auguste Renoir. I don't believe we've studied Renoir yet. If you look at Monet's version here, what do you notice? Do you see where any part of this painting that gives you an impression that it is a certain object, but when you really look close, it's not actually there? You're looking at shadows, you're looking at reflections on water. If you look at the upper left-hand side, it looks like trees are in the background, but they're not really trees. Things start to get into the obscure and just give you the impression that things are going to look like they actually do. In 1874, Monet and some of his friends had also been rejected by the traditional shows organized, and they went ahead and organized their own show. So Monet included this painting called Sunrise, Impression Sunrise. One critic made fun of Monet's painting, saying, "You can't see anything, it's only an impression." This comment led to the new style of painting as Impressionism. So basically the entire Impressionist movement was born of a critic saying that his painting wasn't good enough. So what do you think you see in this painting? Do you see images of boats? Do you see images of trees? Perhaps maybe a crane or a factory in the back right? You clearly see a sunset. Is it an island? Is there a dock? Perhaps the shore is nearby. How does it make you feel? Is it peaceful? Is it quiet? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel anxious? Why do you think they started to experiment with this way, rather than doing a traditional or realistic style? Was it fun to let people give an impression of what they actually thought or wanted of a scene? Monet tried to use his eyes like a prism and break all of the light up into the various bands of color, like a rainbow. Here you can use the example of when somebody has a piece of crystal and a rainbow comes out of it when light shines through, breaking up white light into different colors. Using different colors to describe an object that is a solid color is called broken color. So let's go deeper into that. So for example, if you're painting a red ball, but you have spots inside the red ball that are red and orange and green and blue, other than just the different shades of red, you would use broken color. So in this painting, what you're going to look for are the blues and purples in the water. The water's not blue. The blue has light blue and purple and dark blue and dark purple and light purple. It even has whites when you see the reflection of the boats. You also see the greens and the reds of the tree leaves. Perhaps this is getting to the end of summertime and the leaves are starting to turn a little bit red and orange, but yet there's still green there. So you just don't paint a whole tree green. You give it different colors, light green, dark green, etc. Several years later, however, work began to get really difficult, and his work started to get rejected, which means he wasn't making any money, and it became really difficult. He was married and he had a child, but he was very poor, and he had a really hard time supporting his family. Sometimes he would cut up his canvases into small pieces so that people, his creditors, wouldn't take them to sell his debts. So in other words, if you didn't pay your bills, people would come to your house and take your furniture and your belongings and sell them in order to get paid back. So why do you think the other artists and dealers and art collectors didn't like Monet's work at the time? What is your opinion of this painting? Do you like or dislike this style of art? Perhaps, and this of course is his wife Camille and his child in the garden, perhaps people at this time were living a more formal lifestyle. Photography had just been invented and things were realistic. So maybe people didn't like the idea of a vagueness about a painting. Monet felt that he had to set up his easel and paint outside to capture the shifting spots of light and shadows. Think about what your garden looks like as the sun moves over it over the day, or when you're at the beach. It looks totally different in the morning when compared to high noon and then later in the evening. He did not use browns or grays for shadows, and instead he always used blues and purples, and you can see that with the tree that's casting the shadow across the road here. He put bright spots of color or even white right next to each other and let the eye of the viewer mix them together. He discovered that complementary colors painted right next to one another seem to be bright and more intense. So when you see a complementary color, it's two colors on a color wheel that are opposite one another. And I'm going to add a slide in here so that you can talk about this. But for instance, orange is directly across the wheel from blue and yellow directly across the wheel from purple. And what ends up happening is that you end up seeing an intensity of color because the two of them complement each other so much. This right here is called the grain stack at sunset in 1891. And every time the light would change, Monet would change to a new canvas. So you can see why, if he was painting all day long, how there might be 3 paintings that are almost of the same subject matter, but at 3 different times of the day. He could sometimes paint on 20 canvases in one day, and he would work on the same canvas at the same time each day until the painting was finally complete. Monet tried to paint nature in all aspects: sunlight, rain, snow, sunrise, sunset, all of it. What time of day do you think this one was painted? Morning or evening? Why do you think that? Get into this so that they can start thinking about the light use and color use in the painting. Notice the people walking down the stairs. There's 2 of them in the back. Only the one closest to the viewer has any clear details at all, but you can still tell that the figures in the back are an adult and 2 children walking down the stairs. The stairs, if viewed up close, don't actually look anything like stairs, but from a distance it's clear that that's what they are. It gives you the impression. So what do you like about the painting? What would you change? How do you feel when you're looking at this painting? Why do you think you feel this way? Exploring the Seine River, he came upon Giverny, 50 miles northwest of Paris, and then he moved there. By then, Paul Durand Ruel was selling Monet's work, and his success was finally increasing. After 10 years of renting a house, he was finally able to buy one, and then later buy land across the road, where he enlarged a small pond to make a water garden, which later became the subject of so many of his paintings, like this one, The Bridge Over the Pond of Water Lilies. Monet collected Japanese prints for their unique perspective and sharp angles and bold line and flat color. He created this bridge influenced by a Japanese bridge from his collection. He even planted willows along the banks of the pond like the Japanese traditionally do. He planned his entire gardens carefully so that the flowers bloomed during every single season. Why do you think he built his own path? Do you think it provided him year-round entertainment as the different flowers and plants came into bloom? Here again is the same bridge with different colors. Compare the two paintings. Summertime with bright pinks and reds and yellows. Perhaps this one is in the dead of summer in the afternoon where it's darker and green and there's more shadows. Notice the blue shadow on the bridge. One of Monet's famous works is the water lily painting, which he began when he was 73 years old. He worked on this task until he died, and they have been compared to the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel. Monet painted 19 panels, each 6.5 feet high, and some as much as 20 feet wide. He had a special studio built for them that had a skylight as high as a 6-story building. It would have been incredible to see that in person. Again, here's another example of his water lilies paintings. Notice the different playing with the colors, purples and greens. Sorry for the movie in the background, everybody. He died in 1926, and his influence on future painting was and still is tremendous. He changed the way people look at the world, especially at nature, and inspired the Impressionists to paint with bright colors and expressive brushstrokes. Since Giverny was opened as a museum, in 1980, there have been many exhibits of his work, and he became extremely popular. So, the next few slides are that of the projects, and Eleni will do that in the video that she recorded.